In this video, I'm going to talk about why now is the absolute perfect time for Lucasfilm Games to create a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game, and I'm also going to answer the question on who should develop such a game, and also talk about what era a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game should focus on. So a lot to discuss in this video, but first, take a look at this. If you haven't heard, Bloodline Heroes of Lithis just released some awesome new content, and a huge thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Now, if you've never heard of Bloodline Heroes of Lithis, it's an incredibly unique game that lets you marry two bloodlines together, which can result in over 1,000 possible fantasy hybrids that inherit the traits and visual features of their parents, and then it passes down from each family tree and fuses into one. And you can even create variations of orcs, demons, demigods, dwarves, and everything in between, from vampires to dragonborn. So join me now and download Bloodline Heroes of Lithis for free by clicking my link in the description below, or scan the QR code on the screen and receive an amazing starter pack worth $20. And what's really neat about this game is that you can create your own unique legendary champions as well by combining many of the different bloodlines together. You can race heirs with companions, waifus, and yes, you can switch genders of companions freely too. And what's really cool is that new bloodlines are also released every 2 weeks, and the newest bloodline is called Tide Razors, who are powerful demigods that originated from the fiercest seas. And Bloodline Heroes of Lithis also features impressive visuals, a well-crafted story campaign, and yes, even online PvP multiplayer with seasonal guild wars, where you can ultimately earn extremely unique hybrid champions called Bloodcraft Legends. So download Bloodline Heroes of Lithis right now for free on iOS or Android by clicking my link in the description below, or scan the QR code on the screen and get a special starter pack worth $20. And this starter pack contains 1 summoning crystal, 100,000 in gold, and 100 diamonds. And the first 30 players to leave their in-game account ID and username in the first pinned comment section below will receive a free legendary female succubus champion, the Luxuriant, one of the best mages to carry you in the game. And a massive thank you to Bloodline Heroes of Lithis for supporting this channel by sponsoring this video. So the big question that I think needs to be answered first before talking about Star Wars Battlefront 3 and diving into all this is, why create a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game right now? And I think this is a question that Lucasfilm Games themselves are trying to answer as well. When is the perfect time to start creating a Star Wars Battlefront 3? Well, in my opinion, right now is the perfect time to get to work on Battlefront 3. I think it's a huge mistake if Lucasfilm Games waits any longer, simply because Dave Filoni is creating some of the best Star Wars right now with the Ahsoka series. Episode 4 and 5 of Ahsoka absolutely blew me away, and I personally think it is the best Star Wars produced under Disney with Dave Filoni ever. And I'm not over-exaggerating on that. I think episode 4 and 5 are just absolutely amazing episodes of Star Wars, and some of the best Star Wars ever produced, period. So I think right now is the absolute best time for Lucasfilm Games to start working on Star Wars Battlefront 3, or they're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity. Because take a look at this. Look at all of the heroes that we could have in a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game. Of course, you have Ahsoka, you have Baylan, you have Shin, you have Captain Rex, Anakin, Thrawn, Sabine, Hera, just to name a few. You can even include Chopper in there if you wanted to, but just take a look at this roster of heroes that you can take from the Ahsoka series and put into a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game. This is absolutely incredible, and every single one of these heroes, in my opinion, is absolutely stellar, and, you know, a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. I absolutely love all of these characters, the new ones, the old ones. All of these characters are stellar characters. Now, since we are technically in the era between episode 6 and 7, we have to also talk about the Mandalorian heroes as well, which is yet another reason why Lucasfilm should be scrambling to make Star Wars Battlefront 3. That is, if they aren't already working on it. You have Mando that you could have as a hero. You have Bo-Katan. You have Moff Gideon. of course, Boba Fett, you have the armor, you have Fennec Shand, you have Luke Skywalker, of course, and if Baby Yoda becomes more powerful in the Force, and as a Mandalorian, which I'm guessing is going to happen, you can also include little Grogu in there as well. So many heroes just from the Mandalorian on top of all of the Ahsoka heroes that I just mentioned. So let me know, out of all of these heroes, who would you play with and who would you look forward to playing with the most? I think all of these heroes are standout characters. Of course, I would want to play with Ahsoka, but Baylan is definitely one of my top tier characters from Ahsoka. And then, of course, I could not forget about Shin. She is definitely a standout villain in the Ahsoka series. Amazing characters right here. Now, on top of that, we have to talk about the locations that they can take from both the Ahsoka series and the Mandalorian series. And again, all of these locations are stellar locations. You have Lothal here, which is an iconic Rebels location. You have Cetos, a newer location that we've never seen before, and I absolutely love this location. We have Arcana as well, and then we have Corellia too. So all of these locations that we've seen so far would make for some awesome battlegrounds for a Battlefront game. Now, of course, some of these maps might be better for a heroes versus villains type of mode, of course, so keep that in mind, or maybe a smaller team deathmatch type of mode, but regardless, these locations would be amazing to see. Now also, there's the Mandalorian locations as well. We have Mandalore, we have Navarro, we have, I think it's called Sorgan if I'm not mistaken, and then Morak. So all of these locations right here are just a few from the Mandalorian that I grabbed for this video, but my goodness, the amount of planets and locations that they could put in a Battlefront 3 is just awesome. And of course, another big question that I'll answer here in just a second is, what era should Battlefront 3 focus on? I'll answer that in just a second, but I first want to tackle the question of who should develop Battlefront 3. What developer would you go with? And this is a tough one. There's a lot of different developers out there. Of course, DICE is one of them. But in my opinion, DICE's track record with game launches is not that good. You know, they botched Battlefront 2's launch. They botched Battlefield 5, Battlefield 2042. Honestly, Battlefield 4 didn't have a good launch as well. It had tons of technical problems as well. So when it comes to DICE, I think they need to prove to themselves first that they can actually launch their own game properly first. And that goes with the next Battlefield. I think they need to launch their next Battlefield game properly before they can tackle a Battlefront 3. Now, with that said, I'm going to talk about the Call of Duty team of developers, including Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, and that whole team over there. I have played Modern Warfare 2 in a third-person mode, and it is absolutely fantastic. And when I played this, I was very surprised. Of course, I played this during launch and first discovered this during the launch of the game. And granted, Call of Duty is not perfect, right? There's some issues with Modern Warfare 2 in particular, especially with the movement feeling a little bit too slow and cumbersome, but we do have Modern Warfare 3 right around the corner, which promises to not only bring back all of those classic Modern Warfare 3 maps, but also that movement that Call of Duty is known for, which I love, the faster movement, the faster mantling, and I'm excited for Modern Warfare 3. And this just shows you that, you know, Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward and all these developers over on the Call of Duty side of things, they do actually listen to player feedback, and they are willing to make changes to their game. And again, we go back over to that Modern Warfare 2 third-person view, and it just looks awesome, and I can't imagine what a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game would look like running on this Call of Duty engine. I think it would look freaking amazing, to be honest with you. Imagine this being a clone trooper or a stormtrooper roaming around on one of the Clone Wars maps. There's so much potential with a Call of Duty developer creating a Star Wars Battlefront game. And another thing I do want to bring up is, you know, Call of Duty, they have some experience creating futuristic content with Infinite Warfare and games like that. They're no stranger to creating futuristic content in the past. So this is yet another reason why I think Call of Duty should tackle a Star Wars game. Now, with that said, should it be a Star Wars Battlefront 3? That's the question. Or should it be a totally new Star Wars game? Honestly, I don't really care if it's called Star Wars Battlefront 3 as long as it is a really well-produced Star Wars multiplayer game with really good matchmaking, really good gameplay, tons of weapon customization, tons of player customization, amazing graphics, and so on. As long as it has all of that, I'll be happy, and I think you'd be happy too. And again, I have to go back to the fact that Call of Duty is not a perfect franchise, but they have had a much better track record at launches and at making sure that it does not have nearly as many technical issues compared to the Battlefield series. I mean, the Battlefield series, honestly, it has been disaster after disaster after disaster, including the Star Wars Battlefront series with the terrible launch of Battlefront 2 from DICE. So I don't think Lucasfilm Games really wants to go through all that again, in my opinion. Now, if DICE proves it to themselves and to us that they can do a launch properly, I'll get on the bandwagon behind DICE. This is not a video to shame the DICE developers or to just run them down. I still do believe in that team, and I believe in them that they can actually pull it off someday, and I challenge them to launch a game properly. Their next game has to launch smoothly in order for me to believe in them as a developer. It's just the facts. Now, also, what era should Star Wars Battlefront 3 focus on? This is a massive question, and definitely a question that's not that easy to answer because you have so many different types of Star Wars fans. You have the Clone Wars fans, you have the original trilogy fans, sequel trilogy fans, and a lot of you are probably thinking, why not just include all eras at the beginning? Well, I think if they were to start fresh with a new developer, like the Call of Duty developers, for instance, I don't think they could really afford to do all three eras at the beginning, or all the different eras. I just don't think that's going to be possible this time around, especially if we want Battlefront 3 sooner than later. Now, with that said, I go back to the facts that I brought up with the Ahsoka series, all the different heroes and iconic locations, the Mandalorian series, and I think that focusing on the era between Episode 6 and Episode 7 would be a very wise decision indeed, because you're going to get all of those heroes and all of that content if they were to focus on that, and they can tie in content directly to the Disney Plus series, because let's admit it, we all want to play with all of these new characters, all of these heroes after watching the Ahsoka series. I know I did, so I think that'd be really cool. Now, with that in mind, I have to add that I think it's very important that they also include Clone Wars content in there from the beginning of a Battlefront 3 game. I think Clone Wars is such a big era in Star Wars that I could not imagine a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game, releasing without Clone Wars content. I would definitely want to play with clone troopers, Obi-Wan Kenobi, fight on the iconic locations like Geonosis, Mustafar, and Coruscant, and locations like that. And what we're seeing with these new series is that they are bringing these iconic locations from the Clone Wars like Coruscant into these newer series, like Andor. I know Andor is technically not between Episode 6 and 7, but that's a whole other discussion, by the way. Andor is also a series that provides some awesome content for Star Wars Battlefront 3 as well. But with that said, my point is that there's a lot of Clone Wars planets that are showing up in the new Disney Plus series. And what's really nice about that is these planets can be used for multiple eras within Star Wars Battlefront 3. So for instance, Coruscant, since it's shown up in Andor, they could use that in the era of Andor as well as for the Clone Wars era of matchmaking in a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game. So I think this would make development for a Star Wars Battlefront 3 a lot easier for a team that would tackle such a game, because Star Wars Battlefront 3 would be a massive game to tackle, of course, and I think the key would be to make sure that they have a consistency in producing content Yet another reason why I think the Call of Duty team is the perfect team for developing a Star Wars Battlefront game. Now, another developer on my list is also Epic Games, because with Fortnite, they know how to pump out content like no other. They have experience with Star Wars content. So I believe that Epic Games would also be a big candidate for a Star Wars Battlefront 3 game. I would love to see them create a Star Wars Battlefront. But let me know in the comments down below, who do you think the perfect developer for a Star Wars Battlefront 3 would be? Let me know. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and then also let me know what heroes would you want to see in a Star Wars Battlefront 3 as well. But I will see you all later, and I apologize if my voice is a bit raspy. I am definitely getting over a cold over here, but I will see you all later. Take it easy, everyone, and may the Force be with you always.